If you have a look at your newspapers this morning, on front pages of them, you'll see headlines such as this on The Sun: blinded, Chelsea chief chemical attack on Roman. The Times: Abramovich poisoned at talks. The Mirror's gone with Abramovich poisoned at peace talks. So this is all because it was revealed yesterday. Reports came out that the Chelsea owner Roman Abramovich was poisoned while in peace talks in Ukraine. Joining us now is a man who hopefully will have a bit more detail on this and be able to explain it to all of us listening. It's a major news story, and this is major news for Philip Ingram, MBE. He's a former senior military intelligence officer. Philip, we really appreciate you joining us. Actually.
Good morning.
It's wonderful to have you on. For those that are just waking up, listening to us talking about the news, perhaps for the first time, can you tell us what the reports are saying?
Well, putting it into context, Abramovich is acting as a go-between between the Ukrainians and the Russians as part of the peace negotiations that have started a few weeks ago. And we're going back a couple of weeks whenever the first set of talks were happening just across the border in Belarus, where allegedly after the talks concluded, Abramovich went back to his accommodation and felt ill with the symptoms that have been described. Now, it's sources close to Abramovich that say that he suffered this.
Can I ask you, Philip, and for somebody that's meant to be helping with peace talks, and whose interests would it be to hurt Abramovich and prevent him taking further part in peace talks?
Well, see, that's the key question, because there's been lots of speculation in the papers as to whether it was the Ukrainians that did it, whether it was the Russians that did it, whether it was Russian hardliners trying to throw the talks away. And I've had a good look at this, and there really isn't enough information to say whether actually he was poisoned in the first place, and if he was, who could have done it. But going back to looking at it from a theoretical perspective, would it have worked for the Ukrainians? Well, no, they wanted the talks. They were participating in the talks. Abramovich was the way of getting a message into Putin, and actually subsequent reports have said that Abramovich physically took a letter, handwritten letter from Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, to Vladimir Putin, who then laughed at it. Russian hardliners trying to derail it. How do they get involved in the talks? A possibility. But interestingly, at the same time, there was a story coming out where the Russian Minister of Defense was trying to suggest that the United States and the Ukrainians were working together on chemical weapon programs and biological weapons programs. And they were circulating lots of documents around trying to suggest that they had proof of this. And all of a sudden, this happens. And sources close to Abramovich, well, we all know that Abramovich is close to Putin, so sources close to Abramovich or close to Putin are putting this out. And the Russians have a doctrine with a fantastic word describing it called maskirovka, which is all about masking. It's all about trying to put something out there that's not necessarily true to have another effect. And we also know that the Russians were trying to create what's called a false flag incident at the time. So do something to blame someone else so that they can then escalate in a different way. So, speculating, and it purely is speculating at this stage, I would put it into that sort of category at the moment.
Philip, can I ask you, with what's recently happened in their own shores with Salisbury and the poison of Mr. Litvinenko, should we be really surprised that this thing's going on at this level?
Well, we should be surprised that there are accusations of chemical weapons that have been used. The poisoning of Sergei Skripal with Novichok, that was appalling in Salisbury. Litvinenko with a radiological agent that left a trail of polonium-210 across London. Again, that shows the measures at which the Russians will go to. And we go back to Salisbury, and this is why I talk with Maskirovka. We all remember the infamous RT.com interview of the two Russian intelligence agents who did it, who said, no, we didn't do it. We were only visiting Salisbury because we heard of the famous spire.
Yeah.
I'm just going to reel off some of the symptoms that he had. Reportedly, red eyes, constant and painful tearing, and peeling skin as well. There's some reports as well saying that he was temporarily blind. Do we know anything about his current state, how he is now?
We don't, and your red eyes and your watering eyes and all the rest of it are symptoms of some chemical weapons poisoning. Peeling skin is not something that have come across within the nerve agents that people have talked about. That would potentially come in with blister agents and other things. So there's inconsistencies in the reports and that. But again, you don't necessarily need a military chemical weapon to cause some form of chemical poisoning if you want to do that. And your nerve agents and chemical weapons are not the sort of thing that intelligence organizations are carrying around in their back pockets where, just in case there's an opportunity to try and assassinate or create a false flag incident or something else. It would have to be a very deliberately planned operation. And again, we've seen the Russians do this not just in Salisbury and not just in London with Litvinenko, but also with the Russian opposition leader Navalny, who ended up with Novichok in his underpants, which is where they put it down to.
Well, that's it, because some of these reports are saying that the dosage wasn't high enough to kill any of the three that were affected by this. The most likely target would have been Abramovich. So they're kind of saying that it makes sense that it's almost to be seen as a warning sign.
It is, but again, when you start messing around, if it is these agents, and I personally don't think it is, but if it is these agents, it's very difficult to mess around with just enough dose to make you ill, because Novichok, for example, less than a grain of salt of Novichok absorbed through the skin will kill you. Wow. We're talking minute amounts. So how do you put that into someone's food or water, or it actually doesn't need to be ingested. You just need to touch somewhere where that is. And it goes onto the skin and gets absorbed. It's very difficult to sit and calculate what will kill someone and what will injure someone and all the rest of it. So it's in military terms not an act of war.
Philip, what measures would Mr. Abramovich be taking to safeguard this? I'm guessing obviously he'll have protection of some sort.
Well, I'm sure he's got his close protection teams that are in, whether they're trained in looking for this sort of thing or not. If they weren't 2 weeks ago, I'd say they certainly are now, from what we're seeing in the headlines. But again, it's really difficult. Polonium was only identified whenever we knew that there was a radiological agent after Litvinenko had died, and we could trace the trail around London with the right sort of detector devices. Novichok, most modern detector devices for chemical weapons and all the rest of it will not detect it. It's only if samples are taken to specialist laboratories. Mm-hmm. So again, his protection team will put a bubble around him in a way that everything is sanitized, cleaned, and everything else. But then the talks have moved from Belarus, where it would be easier to do something to Turkey. And again, President Erdogan, who is now chairing the talks, will be very clear. He will not want anything to happen. So he will apply Turkey's national capability to make sure that the talks are concluded safely.
That's what I was going to say. Could it have a negative effect, a knock-on effect on peace talks?
Well, it would do. And again, this goes back to who was there to benefit from it. If Putin had been able to turn around and say, my negotiator, Abramovich, got poisoned and killed by the Ukrainians, this shows the Ukrainians are not living up to wanting peace, and therefore I'm going to use that as an excuse to redouble my attacks and attack through the whole of Ukraine. Putin was looking for an excuse to do that at the time. So again, if it was, and that's a very big if, because there's just not enough information to make a call. But if it was, it's yet another failed operation by Putin.
Philip, we appreciate you coming on and speaking on this when there's not too much information at your hands, but it was brilliantly explained. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer.
talkSPORT Breakfast with Laura Woods, Monday to Wednesday mornings 6 till 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.